Morocco. These two parallel paths for economy and society would have never been able to achieve the goals if not based on a democratic, strong ground. Throughout this phase, we focused on the pillars of democratic transition represented in putting the end to the chapter of human rights violations through a pioneer experience in being just to victims and through also reconciliation that opened the floor for confidence in the new era, as well as the new concept for power and authority that turned the authorities and the power into new methods for supporting development. And today we're getting ready for the second development and the second amendment for the family contract to give more rights to Moroccan women. At the level of supporting stability in the time that has a lot of ideological instabilities, Morocco promulgated a spiritual method to put an end to religious extremism as well as violence, in addition to its pioneer contribution in fighting terrorism through an internationally acknowledged experience. All these levels showed that the strategy endorsed within the framework of this system led by the Majesty, the King, achieved its aspirations as there has been a real transition in Morocco towards more pragmatic representation in the international world. And Morocco, as it was always, has been active in this sensitive region in the world, and it has enough capabilities to enable it to go on with its efforts for reconstruction, especially at this difficult moment faced by the Sahel and desert area, and also on both banks of the Mediterranean Sea. I would like to wrap up my speech by expressing thanks and appreciation to IMF and the World Bank and to all our financial partners who supported us through this path and provided the assistance. Thank you for your due listening.
Merci, Minister Legja. And now we're going to show a beautiful video on beautiful Morocco. Just enjoy. Thank you.
Welcome to Morocco, a land that is blessed by nature, a nation with a rich ethnic and cultural heritage. At the crossroads of three great civilizations, steeped in the radiance of Islam, so close to Europe, but also an African nation bearing the voice of its continent. Institutional continuity and sound leadership of the country's affairs have fostered progress and speeded development at the turn of the millennium under the leadership of His Majesty King Mohammed VI. Over the past 2 decades, a series of reforms has propelled the Moroccan economy to a new phase of growth, driven by the diversification and strengthening of its productive fabric. Enhanced macroeconomic balances underpin a historic shift towards the implementation of ambitious sectoral strategies. The modernization of the agricultural sector as a driver of socio-economic development and the development of global business lines through the creation of industrial platforms, offering cutting-edge solutions that are progressively carbon-free and export-driven. These industries serve roughly 100 markets through a number of free trade agreements. The deployment of world-class infrastructure throughout the kingdom has fostered its openness to trade, offering investors a wide range of opportunities in an economy that has emerged as one of the most competitive in the region. Proactive macroeconomic policies, Morocco has demonstrated remarkable resilience in coping with the crises that plague the global economy. Morocco can also rely on the continued support of its international financial partners as a result of far-reaching reforms that have consolidated the country's budgetary leeway. These reforms go hand in hand with the consolidation of the rule of law and institutions. As head of state and commander of the faithful, and guarantor of the country's independence and territorial integrity, His Majesty the King has been driving the country's momentum for reform for over 2 decades. As a constitutional, democratic, parliamentary, and social monarchy, the kingdom is continuously pursuing the process of strengthening the institutions of a modern state, underpinned by the principles of participation, pluralism, and good governance. Meanwhile, the Advanced Regionalization Project is serving as a powerful driver for equitable territorial development. On the basis of a renewed social pact that Morocco looks to the future at the start of the 21st century. The reform of the family code and the status of women is at the heart of the challenges of modernizing society. This project, which has made significant progress over the past 20 years, is currently undergoing a new generation of reforms. Women's participation in the workforce, their emancipation, and their active involvement in all sectors of society are major objectives in line with the unreserved equality enshrined in the Constitution. As economic development cannot be achieved without equity, social justice has been at the forefront of the country's strategy since the launch of the National Initiative for Human Development. With its emphasis on practical measures to combat poverty and exclusion, the INDH program enhances the dignity of the most vulnerable citizens and fosters their contribution to the common good. In line with this vision, the royal impetus aims to promote an innovative and participatory approach, mobilizing all public and private players, civil society, and citizens for a renewed approach to development. Unlocking potential, correcting economic and social distortions, and promoting inclusion for all. This is the challenge we face in driving forward the path towards progress. The COVID-19 crisis underscored the importance of responsible management, positioning Morocco as a role model for its ability to protect its population through effective consensual measures. The crisis also accelerated the country's social protection program, now a national priority. Another key priority is the upgrading of the health and education sectors. On the one hand, to strengthen healthcare coverage throughout the country, and on the other hand, to pursue the modernization of the education system to achieve greater equity and more effective tracking of performance, and thus prepare for the skills required in the future. The experience of a Morocco that looks beyond models and builds on its strengths is the cornerstone of the ongoing cooperation with its neighbors. Through its investment in strengthening South-South cooperation, Morocco has made African integration an absolute priority in favor of a strong, united Africa. It advocates a multi-dimensional model of cooperation aimed at strengthening economic relations with its partners while forging solid institutional, cultural, and human ties. In an uncertain and volatile world, Morocco is charting a course of stability through active diplomacy, affirming the kingdom's position on the continental and global scenes. With its rich tradition of mediation, Morocco promotes development and global stability with the utmost respect of sovereignty of states and territorial integrity. It was during the recent World Cup in Qatar that Morocco's national colors shined most brightly in the eyes of the world, worn by a team that exemplified the values of courage, resilience, family respect, and solidarity that are the hallmarks of each and every Moroccan. It was also in the face of hardship and mourning that the ability to mobilize efforts and the strength of the Moroccan nation proved their worth. Through a massive earned international international admiration. Bolstered by its proactive approach and the mobilization of financial instruments with its international institutional partners, Morocco has rolled out a full-scale Marshall Plan dedicated to the areas devastated by the earthquake. It is this united Morocco, sovereign and open to the world, proud of its heritage and committed to the future, which is today welcoming the world of finance to Marrakech.
Okay, thanks a lot. So the next session is gonna take place in just a couple of minutes. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the upcoming event will start in 5 minutes. Please take your seats and switch your phones to...
السيدات والسادة الحضور، الندوة القادمة ستبدأ في غضون 5 دقائق. نرجو منكم الالتزام بمقاعد.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next meeting will start in 5 minutes. We ask you to sit down and close your mobile phones or put them on air mode. Thank you.
السيدات والسادة الحضور، نرجو منكم.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the guests of the symposium.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage your moderator and distinguished panelists.
Could you please take a seat?
هل لكم أن تجلسوا في مقاعدكم؟ شكرا. يرجى الجلوس.
Pour qu'on puisse commencer la...
So that we may start the second session. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hello? It's not working anymore.
Assalamu alaikum.
Greetings and thank you. Please allow me once again, on my behalf and on behalf of the IMF work team, to thank the Moroccan authorities and the working group that participated for more than 3 years in the process of preparing the annual meetings for the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. I am Jihad Azhour, and I'm the Director of Middle East and Central Asia at the IMF, and we wanted that the opening of these meetings be specific to Morocco, and we were honored to listen during the first sitting to the speech made by the head of the government, which was very valuable. And during this sitting, we will delve into greater in-depth discussions regarding the look towards the future. What is the agenda for the future for Morocco, and how can we build a growth that is participatory in nature? Please allow me to speak in English now.
For hosting us. In this first round of discussion, we are going to explore the agenda for the future of Morocco, but also for the future of countries who are currently in the process of transforming their economies. And for that, I have the privilege to have 3 exceptional speakers from different backgrounds. The first one is Minister Ben Moussa. You all know he is not only an excellent academic, but also an excellent minister, and we were this morning with him visiting all the efforts that is being done to accelerate the reconstruction. The work is excellently done. I would like to congratulate you and the team of the Ministry of Education. I was impressed to see after 4 weeks that things are working and working well. But we are inviting you because also you were the one who put together, based on the decision of His Highness Le Roi Mohammed VI, a committee to think the future. And it was an inclusive and also it was a deep exercise. We will get a bit your views on that. The second speaker comes from Europe, from a country who has done a lot in terms of reforms. 3 decades of transformation put Poland to be in the league of European countries in terms of performance and success. And excuse the pronunciation of the name, Your Excellency, Minister Reszkowska, Minister of Finance, and we will listen to the experience of Poland. The third speaker is a thought provoker. Professor Ricardo Hausmann from Harvard University is someone who is not only teaching, researching, advising, but also thinking. And he focuses on issues from structural reforms to growth to many other issues. Therefore, our first round of discussion will be around a bit setting the stage. And I will start with you, Minister. You have been entrusted of the design of the nouveau modèle de développement. Vous avez mobilisé.
You have mobilized a team quite diversified, and you have made an effort that on the eve of COVID-19, and there was also a political transformation during that period. How could you describe your experience at the moment when His Majesty entrusted you with this most important mission? How did you succeed or manage to bring together divergent views? Could you please give us your feelings and tell us about your experience so that we may project ourselves in the future? A microphone, s'il vous plaît. Microphone, please.
Moi-même et les membres de la commission étions honorés. Sorry, we still have a little technical issue. Je voudrais dire combien les membres de la commission. I'd like to say that members of the Commission and myself, we were honored by this mission given by His Majesty the King, but we were quite conscious about the challenges we had, because the order was not only to come up with a reform program, the request was to come up with a development model that would be a social project and see how we could implement it concretely, starting from an observation that we've made. The observation was that the growth rate was mild, 3% per year, whereas there is a great potential, and Morocco was going through difficulties in terms of social inequalities and territorial inequalities. So the process that has led to this project we wanted this project to be resilient, and in order to do so, it needed to be co-built with all the living counterparts and players of the country, and we have met with all the political players at that time, with the opposition too. We have met with the economic leaders, with the unions, with the chambers of trade, and many other civil society players. We have been there in the field, across the country, in remote areas, in great cities, to listen to everyone and to collect, to listen to all the expectations that were being expressed. We also knew that if we wanted a resilient project, we needed to start from what we were, our reality, our identity, our institutions, and our strengths. That's how we could move forward. We were also quite aware of the fact that a resilient model does not only mean working on, let's say, economic and social dimensions, but it required a holistic effort. And that's how, in this report, we came up first with an ambition by 2050, with a prosperous Morocco, democratic Morocco, that provides well-being to the citizens. And this ambition was expressed, reflected in different axes, by the creation of value, by economic development, but not only. We also thought in terms of upgrading skills and competences, by increasing solidarity and inclusion, but also thinking about the territories, the sustainable development of the various territories of the country. And again, we have thought about other challenges we should think about in the future. So by 2035, we have thought about indicators that would reflect not only growth, but so many other related dimensions I have just mentioned. What is important in this process is the how. Because Morocco has got lots of previous reports that would provide room for reforms, and often the difficulty was the actual implementation. And this is where the Commission and its efforts was to provide complementarity between the state that bears the mission, the state that provides this upgrading of skills and competences, but also a society that frees energy, where you can help better making of decisions. We were quite conscious that this complementary effort, just as what happened after the earthquake, where the action of the state was clear, robust under the leadership of His Majesty, but there were also lots of solidarity actions made by so many players, and this has brought about the change and transformation. So we think that transformation is at the core of this new process, of this complementarity, and we have focused on a series of action principles that we think are key if we want to succeed, such as the impact on the citizen, on the human development, a new approach using the collective value, an approach that is sustainable, that is able to upgrade again the capabilities of all players. And this can only be successful if it is enshrined in a framework of trust between players, with the strengthening of governance-related measures. So recommendations were made. This project can only be implemented thanks to the action and efforts of various players. You have the traditional players, the public sector, the private sector, obviously, but also PPPs, but not only. The third sector also, foundations, associations, businesses, they can all bring about value in terms of common well-being. They can participate in this building of trust in the future. So this development model, this ambition, is the how we are going to do things, but it is also about reforms, about recommendations on strategic policies, but also mechanisms that are going to support the management of change. And this is the model that is going to be the natural reference, the standard for the government, but also for political players, without it being a very detailed program, because of course there is a democratic process in the country, so we have to take this into account.
Questions that I will follow up with you. Thank you very much. Especially on the enablers and how we, in this exercise, we can assess where the weaknesses are. But let me go and compare another experience, which is one of the most successful, I may say, in the last 3 decades in Europe. Poland did, over the 3 decades, a series of reforms. Mr. Minister, what are the main lessons that you think one can draw from the case of Poland, where if you are consulted by another colleague, what would you say are the things to do and also the things not to do or to avoid doing?
Thank you very much for inviting me here, and let me take the occasion and congratulate Morocco on the excellent organization of this really very, very important event. And I feel sorry about the recent earthquake, and I hope for those, for the strength and the resilience of those affected. And thank you for inviting me here and giving me an opportunity to talk a bit about Poland and about the history, which of course has an impact for the future and for the growth of the country. Poland is in a transformation for over 30 years, and this process was of course full of ups and downs and reform fatigues and also unexpected obstacles. But it is very important to say that over 30 years ago, Poland was a poor and peripheral country in the Eastern Europe. And after 30 years, it has become one of the examples of the world's growth champion and success of global success, one of the success stories for the global economy. And surprisingly, this was due to the communist social egalitarianism that allowed for building democracy, for building inclusive society, and for building prosperous country. Because, in my opinion, the inclusive societies, this is the key for the growth. And at the end of the communism, in 1989, Poland was really in a dreadful situation. It was a bankrupt country with the burdened industry, inefficient, economically destructive, and with hyperinflation. And after 30 years, a global growth champion. And from 1992, with constant growth. Even in the global crisis, 2008, 2009, we were the only country in the European Union to avoid recession. So this is really a success story. And how was it possible, and what are the main lessons? So first of all, I think very important is to have the political will and the elites which know where they are going, what are the goals, despite the fact that the decisions which are taken at the moment, they will have their effects, positive effects in the longer term. We might say that someone sows and someone else reaps the political benefits. And sometimes you need to pay a price, a political price, but you need to see the goal and the gain for the society, the gain for the economy, and the gain for the state. The second lesson is that really deep market reforms were necessary, and they were introduced in Poland. Of course, we could do better because there were some difficult points in those reforms, but these reforms, they put foundations to the future growth. The third one, it is the mix of policies. You need to have the proper mix of economic policy, of development policy, focused on accumulation and proper allocation of capital. And the next thing is you need free market, you need open economy, you need open free competition. This all really matters, and this needs to be supported by the culture, by the proper culture. But in the case of, I think, every reform, what is really, really important is that you need to have an anchor for the reform. And in case of Poland and of our reforms from the 90s and 2000s, it was the EU accession. We saw the goal of being a part of the European Union, and World Banks put it once that European Union is a convergence machine, that it takes poor countries and makes them rich. And without the EU perspective, without the EU reforms for Poland, it would be much more difficult to build strong institutions and to change culture. And this was the return to Europe. This was a really strong motivator for the politicians, for the elites, but also for the society to survive, to understand the reforms. Sometimes it was very hard, but the motivator, the strong motivation was there. So this is really the main lessons learned. And I think what you need the egalitarian, inclusive society, you need strong institutions, you need strong policymakers, you need anchor for the reform, but you also need a lot of luck. And don't forget, this is very, very important, don't forget about the most vulnerables, because the growth needs to be inclusive. And reform, you need, in frame of the reform, you need to have the prevention mechanisms developed not to be too deep, not to sacrifice the most vulnerable ones.
Thank you very much. Again, I have certain how an anchor like accessing Europe was easy to convey to the population, and the political economy of such transformation in a cycle that with democracy becomes very short. But I'll come back to that. Let me maybe now move to Professor Hausman. Ricardo, you have worked in different geographies from Latin America to Middle East, Asia, and you have written, taught about those issues for decades. Now you are here in Morocco, at those annual meetings where many issues have successively affected us over the last few years. What you would say about succeeding in big transformative reforms?
Well, first of all, Jihad, thank you very much for this invitation, and thanks to Roberto Cardarelli for writing this book and for also including me. This is a great honor to be back in Morocco. I was here some 15 years ago, and I was able to see many of these bets, c'est Paris, that were just bets at the time, to see them materialize. Tanger Med, the aerospace, the car industry, the tourism plans, and so on. So I'm super happy to be back and to reflect on lessons for the world from Morocco that I think some of them are in the book, some of them are not sufficiently emphasized in the book. So I'm going to try to extract some lessons for the world from this. But let me start by saying that the world is quite frustrated with this issue of growth, because we thought we knew the secret. The secret is that we had to improve health. We had to have families with fewer children so we could invest more in the education of the children. So with fewer children, more educated, in school, women would have more of a chance to participate in the economy, so higher female labor force participation in more urbanized settings. And so this combination of education, health, demographic transition, urbanization was going to facilitate the absorption of technology, growth, and so on. Well, guess what? Since 1990, 90% of the countries have narrowed significantly the life expectancy gaps, say with the US or the advanced world. 90+% of countries have narrowed the education gap. 90% of countries have narrowed the urbanization gap. 80% of countries have narrowed the female labor force participation gap. But only 40-some% of countries have narrowed the income gap. The medium country has not narrowed the income gap, in spite of narrowing dramatically all these other gaps. So this poses a question: how come? How come we do all these major transformations and we don't get to narrow the income gap? That's in part, let me say, because technological gaps have been widening in the majority of countries. You would say, how could technological gaps be widening if education gaps are narrowing? So I've been thinking a lot about these things, and I want to say that all these things that people mention, macro stability, structural reforms, health, education, etc., female labor force participation, they're all in principle good. Some of them are intrinsically good, but they may not necessarily constitute a growth strategy. And to explain that, I want to make the following distinction. I think that all of these good things are complements. They are not substitutes. Complements are things like coffee and sugar. Substitutes are things like coffee and tea. Well, if you like to drink your coffee sweet, you're going to either run out of coffee or you're going to run out of sugar. If things were substitutes, you run out of coffee no matter you drink tea. But if there are complements, you tend to run out of some before you run out of others. And the one you run out of first becomes your binding constraint. And if you don't have coffee, giving more sugar is not going to solve the problem. So these different areas of policy are complements. And because of that, you run out of some before you run out of others. As a consequence, this has very important implications for what constitutes a growth strategy. I think in Latin America, my own country, Venezuela, and Argentina are scientific proof that bad macro can destroy a country. But I think that Chile and Peru constitute scientific proof that good macro is not a growth strategy, that you can have the good macro and not grow, not narrow gaps. So I would say, if macro is not your binding constraint, more macro is like giving more sugar when you don't have coffee. I would say the same thing about education. Education, I'm in the education business, so I'm not going to talk evil about education, but the question is education the binding constraint? Maybe not. Maybe you will educate more people, but if the economy is not solving other problems that can absorb people, your educated people might leave, they might be driving Uber, and you may not be extracting the full value of their education. And that, I would say, is the typical performance of most countries in the world right now. They've narrowed dramatically their education gaps, but they have not narrowed their income gaps. I would say the same thing about health. I would say the same thing about female labor force participation. They are not silver bullets. They will have a big impact on growth if they are the binding constraint. If they're not the binding constraint, they may not have the impact you're hoping. So you cannot add some improvement in health to some improvement in education to some improvement there, and you add them all up and say this is how much the economy will be growing. They don't add up that way. If you move the binding constraint, you'll see action. So as a consequence, I would say another fact. You know, some people say, do we want export-led growth? Do we not want export-led growth? What alternatives are there to export-led growth? In the studies I've done, let me put it very bluntly, all sustained exports, all sustained growth are export-led. There is no such thing as non-export-led growth, in the sense that, on average, when a country grows at 1, exports grow at 1.4. Sustained growth, you have exports growing faster than GDP. So all exports is always, all growth is always export-led. Sustained growth is always export-led, and not just export-led, it's export-led in a transformation of your export package towards greater diversity and towards more complexity in the things you export. In the study I've done, essentially, 40% of countries narrowed their income gap. Only 20% of countries narrowed the gap significantly. Morocco narrowed the gap. It was 10% of US GDP in 1990. It's now 13% of US GDP. Still, the gap is huge, right? But sort of narrowing. It's in the second quintile of growth experiences in this period, Morocco, okay? Those countries transformed their export basket. They diversified towards more complex products. That is central to a growth strategy. But diversification is full of market failures because it faces a bunch of chicken and egg problems. If you're going to diversify, it means that we're going to start making things you were not making before. But to make things, you have to know how to make them. But you typically don't know how to make the things you don't do. So how do you start making the things you don't do if to make them you have to know how to make them, but you don't know how to make the things you don't do? You need watches, you need watchmakers to make watches, but why are you going to have watchmakers in a country that doesn't make watches? And how do you become a watchmaker if the country is not making watches? So how do you diversify? These things markets are not good at, and just freeing markets is not going to be enough. You will have to have something that I noticed was not mentioned, I would say, at all in the book, and that is that you need industrial policies. You need sector policies. It was even in the video. It was even in the video that you need tourism policy, you need agricultural policy, you need, you need aerospace policy, you need policies to, you need séparer, these bets to facilitate the transformation process. And that's why we see in the Moroccan export basket the growth of tourism in new areas, in new destinations, the whole industrial structure that developed around Tanger Med. You see the movement towards new things. For example, right now, the world is sending the message that there is global warming, climate change, and that every country should focus on how they're going to lower their own emissions, right? That's a conversation, and we will help you lower your own emissions. But if you are in a country like Morocco that has so much sun and so much wind, why should the focus be on helping Morocco lower its emissions? The ambition is, what can Morocco do to help the world lower its emissions? The world is currently emitting a lot because the world is using ammonia as fertilizer, and that ammonia is gray and emits a lot of CO2. So if the world is going to lower its emissions, the world is going to need green ammonia, and OCP is going to provide them with a green ammonia so that the world lower its emissions, not Morocco. If Morocco stops its emissions, the world is not going to notice. But the world is going to notice if Morocco helps them mobilizing its sun and wind resources to help the world lower its emissions. And that, by the way, let me say, is also, I mentioned industrial policy, which is a four-letter word. OCP is a state-owned enterprise, which is also kind of like a four-letter word. If you take an IMF report, it will say, if you search for state-owned enterprise, very, very near, you'll find the word privatization, right? Because it's sort of like, state-owned, private, no. State-owned enterprises can play a strategic role in diversification, and I think that it has played that role in Morocco, and I want to rescue that experience from Morocco to the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ricardo, I have many questions to you, but 2 observations. The question of industrial policy is something that we are internally reflecting on, seriously, but we are reflecting on it. We're a bit worried that is an issue that could be considered or used as a way to develop policies that will limit trade and be a bit on the protectionism than more on designing the future. My second observation, you are sitting near someone who comes from a country where industrial policy destroyed growth in the past. It's very interesting to see what you're saying, and this brings me to my second round of questions, is how you make it happen. And this is an issue where it's not only for good economists or strategists, it's also for those who are going to implement. And this is where we hit the wall of political economy. This is where the big issues, you need to address a situation where you have winners and losers. How you do this? You hit a situation where you have majorities that could be, in fact, losing elections because of those transformative reforms. Again, let me go back to you. How you did in Poland survive 3 decades of reforms without facing those kind of issues. Or maybe you have faced them, but what are the lessons that you have learned from this experience?
Okay, of course, it's not that during the transformation and during the reforms there was a stable political situation. The governments changed many times because, as I said, it is that you need to take sometimes very difficult decisions. Sometimes there is a cost, a political cost, but the main issue was that we saw the ultimate goal, and the ultimate goal was to catch up the West, to become a European Union member, and we had a framework, a very strong framework for the reforms, which was given by the European Commission for the states which were in the accession process and which need to come through transformation. To introduce very strong, very efficient institutional reforms, to fight the corruption, to introduce transparent measures in the administration, to build a culture which was the culture accepted by the European Union and the culture which gave the businesses a very very transparent business environment to grow with their business activities, and so this EU reform, the EU reform anchor, this was really a strong incentive for Poland. Of course, it didn't mean that all the people all the time they were very happy because we were going towards the European Union. At the beginning of the reforms, we had a very deep market reform and also very deep reforms because of the hyperinflation. And we could do more about the vulnerable people in this time, because we a bit and the governments they sacrificed them on the way, and this was the role for the next governments to think about the social programs, to think about those most affected, and about the inclusive growth, to make the growth really inclusive. But the deep market reforms, they had a very important impact on the businesses and on their activities, because we entered a single market, and EU and the single market gives a lot of opportunities. That's one thing. And the free competition, the open market, this allowed for the Polish companies to build really a strong businesses. And nowadays we can see the examples of the businesses which started in the 90s, in the early 2000s, which are now the biggest world's exporters, like furniture, like doors and PVC windows, like the very famous games, The Witcher and Cyberpunk. These are the Polish products and the benchmark, let's say, for Poland. We are also one of the leaders in the spare parts for automotive sector, for the lithium batteries, the first one in Europe. And because we have managed to build a very friendly business environment with a lot of tax incentives supporting the investments, we are also a very attractive country for foreign investors. The FDI grows, the amounts grows every year from like 5% year to year. So Poland has become a hub also for the hubs, a place for the hubs, like for R&D, for innovation, for services in fintech, in ICT. And this is due to the reforms we have carried for those 3 decades, because these were the investments in the infrastructure, in the human development, so the education, the quantity and quality of education was very important, and now we can harvest, let's say, because we have a very, very skilled labor force in Poland. And also in the recent years, the focus on digitalization, on the innovation and support also of the government for those processes. But I think that the big challenge nowadays is the accessibility of the capital, and it is the challenge for the whole Europe. So there is something to be done there, and this is very important also to have strong institutions. I said already about the democracy, open markets, everything, but also the government. The government needs to build a trust with the traders, with the entrepreneurs, but also with citizens. And when you introduce new reforms, you really need to seek for a broader support for the reform and to define the goal clearly and to explain and try to build a coalition around the idea. This is really, a dialogue is very important, but also to create a good environment. And in Poland, it is also, when we are talking about the inclusive growth, about the most vulnerable, you need to have also social policies. Of course, the sound finances are really a key here to afford to realize your goals and also not to lose the social part. And what we did in Poland was a very successful reform of the tax system. It was the organizational reform, legal reform, but also digitalization, which helped a lot with the ceiling of tax system, but also increasing compliance. And we have doubled or more than doubled our tax incomes in the course of the last seven years. So this is really what is important, to have a clearly defined goal, to be decisive. Of course, it will cost sometimes. A political cost will be there, but you need a mature politicians, but you also need a mature society, and this could be done by education, by the democratic processes, which will help and the strong anchors for your reforms.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Let me now also thank you very much. When thinking about sequencing and implementation, turn to you, Minister. You have identified an important set of reforms. You have delivered in the past, as Ricardo mentioned, the delivery on les paris de l'avenir 15 years ago. Where do you see the sequencing of all these important reforms? This is my first question. And my second related questions, do you see gaps? Have you identified certain number of gaps? Especially on the enablers, access to finance, access to talent, access to market. And what have you learned from your experience and experience of others in order to engage in a journey like this? And what is the ideal sequencing of all these reforms?
Je voudrais revenir.
I would like to come back on what Ricardo said about the significance of having a holistic approach whereby reforms are not sequential but are part of an approach that deals simultaneously with different dimensions. Our conviction at the Commission was that we could not achieve our ambitions if we tackled the subjects in a sequential way. Our conviction was also that some reforms had necessarily more impact. Some reforms were mature to be launched immediately. Others required more exchange and debate before being politically implemented. These were reforms that involve winners and losers, and we need to manage to strike a balance to go forward. We were also aware that the capacity of implementation, which is not necessarily and only financial but also institutional, is a real challenge. Based on this, we identified a certain number of subjects on which we had to work, and we regrouped them in 3 axes. An axe relating to the economy and creation of value. And when we talk about value creation, I may link this with what was said about the industrial policy, the need today to diversify, to exert more effort in terms of investment, and these investments need to be connected to the objectives that are part of our development model. The need also to improve upon our competitiveness in a world where the carbon component is significant, hence all the work to be done on low-price energy and carbon that needs to be implemented as a factor of competitiveness of our economy. And third axis, still related to the economy, we need to pay attention to solidarity and to the social aspect, especially here in Morocco, where we have social realities. We don't have only major businesses. We need to work on employment. And the second major field relates to those human-centered efforts, inclusion of women, of the youth. These subjects need to go hand in hand with the major economic issues and need to mobilize efforts and the energy of players. And finally, a third field that can be summed up in a governance approach, how to mobilize territories and how to create the conditions for this sustainable development in a country like Morocco. This has major significance for the population when we talk about water scarcity, for example. This makes sense because you immediately link this to food security. And so working on these dimensions, the digital realm, reform of justice, all these projects and fields that need to be opened up urgently and simultaneously. And this also leads me to another important point. We need to create a consensus on the objective to be reached, and this would justify all the efforts of reform. For these subjects, we need to create a micro consensus to be able to find the right path to reach these reforms. And this is the situation, for example, in the sector that I have the honor to preside over, the education sector. We conducted many efforts based on a roadmap in consultation with all other players, pupils, parents, and other stakeholders to refine our change path and make sure that it becomes a reality while paying attention to the impact and to the way we may mobilize teachers for such exercise. We need, of course, to improve their working conditions, their training, but also their material or financial situation in a structural approach that can be considered more as an investment than a mere increase of an operational budget. A complementary question: how can we steer all this? Do you see it as a centralized effort, state-led or not? Implementing by objectives or through a more detailed formulation? The approach that we prefer is a follow-up mechanism, which is a societal project that involves all actors, the government, the civil society, economic operators. The convergence of all these players is an important subject, and also with assessment stages to see what is working and what is not. And His Majesty the King has entrusted this follow-up mission of the implementation of this reference framework to the High Commissioner for Planning, and the implementation of this structure that is underway has allowed us to create these conditions of convergence geared towards the objective with a clear implementation capacity. And here I would like to talk about the macroeconomic framework, which is not an and per se, but also a lever and a framework that allows us to accompany and achieve this ambition. Of course, we need to mobilize internal resources, external resources, international resources, and diversify all these resources, and also accept that there can be some imbalances when achieving this transformation towards more growth and more inclusive growth with delivery capacity, proven delivery capacity. And this is also the opportunity to stress the importance of assistance by international organizations like the IMF and the World Bank, of high significance to accompany this dynamic and to contribute to the success of such dynamic. Now, the third aspect, which is the role of the private sector, a very important partner indeed, and we will also come back on the industrial policy that Ricardo mentioned earlier. But before we go to this third part, Ricardo, let's talk about the region. You have accompanied several countries in their transformation projects. You have touched very closely different experiences. Some were successes and others not. Are there any elements that differentiate regions when it comes to achieving such a transformation process?
Is very hard to achieve anywhere in Middle East, North Africa, and elsewhere in the world is a cooperative relationship between government and the private sector. there is enormous complementarities between what the private sector can do and what the private sector needs from the government. There are markets for cars, and you can have a market for car and freedom of car, pricing, etc. But no one wants to buy a car if there are no roads, if there are no traffic signs, if there are no traffic lights, if there are no traffic rules, if there are no traffic cops. Every industry lives in a space of public goods. Now it's very hard to sell an electric vehicle because people wonder, if I run out of battery, where am I going to charge the car? And nobody wants to put charging stations because nobody owns an electric car. So you have these chicken and egg problems everywhere, and you have to have a framework where there is enough communication between a private sector that sees opportunities, a private sector that suffers obstacles, and a government that is able to adjust its policies, its infrastructure, its rules to facilitate the exploitation of those opportunities. And that's very hard to achieve. There's, in some countries, there's big distrust of the private sector. There are some parts of government that want to keep control of parts of the economy. In other parts, there's just inability to put society to deal with its issues. You come from Lebanon. We understand that it's been 4 years, an inability to address a major crisis to get yourself together. So I would emphasize the fact that Morocco has a vision of where it wants to go that can facilitate the coordination of reforms in many areas. It's predicated on a relatively healthy political process that is in general, relatively hard to achieve.
Thank you very much. Let me move to the third set of issues, the role of the private sector. Minister Raskowska, how a country who has been in a centralized communist regime for more than 5-6 decades was able to transform very quickly in a vibrant private sector-led economy? Is it a DNA shift or something that has been done that you would like to share with us?
Yes, thank you. I think that we have, despite the communist centralized system we had, and Poles, they had in their DNA this entrepreneurship gene. So at the very beginning, when the Polish market became an open one, and we had these reforms, really there was a boom of the private initiatives, private businesses, and this boom really continues. And in Poland, the majority of the businesses, and our economy is based mostly on the small and medium enterprises, and. What was necessary, of course, was to build a business-friendly environment. And it is not the job which has been done and it's over, because it's usually on the way the governments, they tend to be over-bureaucratic and to over-regulate the environment for the businesses. So the constant dialogue is very, very important. What you said, this is the dialogue, the conversation, the contact, which allows to understand what are the needs, what are the obstacles, and what can be done from the government side. What we needed to do, we need to build the whole infrastructure for businesses, for investments, and to understand that this is really necessary to allow businesses to grow, and so the infrastructure, the investment in the human development, so the education, which is really important. And you need to do this with the businesses, because you need to know if you really need these watchmakers or you need a highly skilled professionals on the ICT sector or others, and what is the industry direction, and also the diversification of the economy. And in Poland, it really did happen, because we have also, we have the industry, but we have a lot of, as I said, small and medium enterprises. We have a lot of services, hubs for very innovative services for the global companies. And this diversification and also the strong macroeconomic fundamentals and the let's say that the flexibility of the businesses, it really helped us to survive the recent crises. Not only the COVID-19, of course, with the support, with the transfers from the state to keep the companies going, not to have the increase of unemployment, but also during the war, which is at our borders. It's really this flexibility, this competitiveness of Polish companies is really something which helps to survive these really difficult times. But this all was a process of transformation, of building a trust between government, institutions and businesses, of building the business-friendly environment. And as I said, this process is not over yet. And a lot is to be done, because we are living not only in Poland with the Polish regulator, we also live in the European Union with the EU regulator. And there is a voice, very strong voice in EU, but also in Poland, for the simpler regulation, for creating more competitive environment, because we have all the trends in the global economy, like fragmentation, like the protectionism and others, and there is a discussion, but we need really to make our businesses, to make the environment more competitive for businesses, and the economies will grow.
Thank you very much. Ricardo, let me move fast. The IP issue, the industrial policy issue, there's growing those shifts in policies. Do you see this as justified, giving the circumstances of, I would say, growing feeling of...
Unfortunately, we can't hear the speaker. The sound is interrupted. We can't hear the speaker properly. There is a staccato in output.
A government is several thousand agencies and several million pages of legislation. So you're managing thousands of agencies and millions of pages of legislation. Nobody has read the million pages of legislation. And nobody knows what all the thousands of government agencies are doing. So you need a system to figure out where you need to edit the million pages of legislation and where you need to reorganize or reorder your thousands of government agencies. And you're going to do it with some kind of goal or purpose, some kind of problem-solving capacity. And in my mind, those problems do not exist at the horizontal level only. There are many problems that are vertical, that are industry-specific. And you have to be able to have conversations at the right level of specificity. Some issues are quite horizontal. Ideally, you want to find problems that are horizontal. And if you solve them, you solve the problem for many industries. But some problems are vertical. And, if you want to have your agricultural sector export, you will have to solve sanitary and phytosanitary problems, certifications, market access, etc. And you'll have to do it for that industry. There is one thing, when things work, you don't know why they work. And when things don't work, you don't know why they don't work. I don't know why Poland works. Okay, but let me put you a couple of hypotheses, okay? The first one is that it was artificially separated from the rest of Europe, and suddenly you realize that Poland is incredibly close to Germany. And as a consequence, you have this labor force that used to have a much lower wage rate than German wage rates. The moment you allow investment and trade to happen, many companies moved east to establish in Poland. And by the way, they moved more to Western Poland than to Eastern Poland. Okay, so proximity to markets, etc., is definitely a good thing, and the European Union opened those markets. But the European Union did something else too, that it took away the power of Poland to prevent Germans or Belgians or Italians or whoever to work in Poland. That means that if there were skills shortages in Poland, it doesn't matter, because you could mobilize skills from anywhere in the continent and send them to Poland. In most developing countries, including, for example, in this region, immigration policies are incredibly restrictive. In Jordan, you have to be a citizen to be a doctor. You have to be a citizen to be an engineer. So if you have some skills shortage, you cannot solve it by just bringing talent from abroad. Immigration policy, in my mind, is probably the cheapest development strategy, development reform that you could do. It generates money, it doesn't cost any money, and it's horizontal. But not all solutions are horizontal. You have to have a government that has the capacity to do the horizontal when there are opportunities, and doing the vertical when there are opportunities. And that vertical is what I want to call industrial policy. I don't want to call industrial policy a set of subsidies, a set of protections. That's not the goal. In my mind, industrial policy should be defined by its goal. And its goal has to be diversification in the direction of greater complexity. That's its goal. Its instruments are going to be opportunistic. They're going to be about solving the need for public goods, the need for solving chicken and egg problems in the appearance of the new. And I think that's how I think of industrial policy. And in that sense, governments have always done it, but they're always there, but everything that can be done should be done better. And there's many ways in which this thing can be improved.
Thank you very much. We are out of time, but I would like to give the last word for you, Minister Ben Moussa, to conclude the session.
Juste un mot pour souligner.
Just a word to stress how important is the assistance by international organizations like the IMF and the World Bank. This assistance and coaching of this transformation process. The needs for finance are extremely important. Given all the stakes and challenges we have mentioned, we have existing solutions, but we also need innovative solutions. How do we create convergence between all stakeholders and players so that they may accompany the choices and the objectives and ambition of each country? How a continent like Africa, with its own realities and its own stakes, there are adaptations that need to be clear when it comes to the objective, but also as to the path to go forward to that transformation. Thank you. This is very interesting. We are going to shift now to the next session, which will be moderated by, and the moderator is appearing on the stage.
Hello? Hello? Oui. So thanks a lot. There's going to be a video, and then session 3 chaired by His Excellency Minister Jazuli and moderated by Dr. Gaffi. So wait a few seconds for session 3 of this event. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the upcoming event will start in 5 minutes. Please take your seats and switch your phones to silent mode.
السيدات والسادة الحضور.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will start in about 5 minutes. We ask you to sit in your seats and also to silence your mobile phones.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage your moderator and distinguished panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage your moderator and distinguished panelists.
Hello, everybody. Very happy to have you here. I'll be the moderator for this session. And you all know how my job is going to be difficult because we are all waiting for lunch. But we have an amazing session with a lot of speakers, and we need all your energy for that. So before talking about Morocco as a privileged land for private investment with all distinguished guests I have, let's open this session with a speech from Minister Delegate to Head of Government in charge of investment, conversions and evaluation of public policies, and let's all welcome him, Mr. Mohsin Jazouli.
Excellencies, fellow ministers, Mr. President, Mr. Wali of the region, Mr. President of the region, Mr. President of the Moroccan Enterprise Association, Mr. President of Moroccan Banking Association, JPBM, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, discussed all with your duty and your all vos qualités respectables. I'm truly honored to be here today, and I extend a warm welcome to all the attendees of this prestigious event set in the colorful city of Marrakech, and which marks a historic first for Morocco. As we gather here just a month after the devastating earthquake that struck our region, we are reminded of the resilience and the unwavering spirit of the Moroccan people who stood as one, united behind their king, His Majesty the King Mohammed VI. In the face of this tragedy, the response was swift and unwavering. Moroccan people joined forces in an extraordinary and impressively organized demonstration of solidarity. Our friends from all over the world extended their hands to help. They came in numbers, showcasing unique and unanimous commitment for the International Committee to stand by Morocco. Now, we transition to a phase of rebuilding and enduring commitment. In line with this commitment, His Majesty the King launched on September 20 an extensive reconstructive program based on a long-term vision. This vision is to provide a resilient, integrated, forward-thinking, and long-lasting solution to the challenges we face. Ladies and gentlemen, this long-term vision is ambitious, and ambition was at the very heart of Morocco's exceptional transformation in the past 20 years. As extensively discussed in earlier sessions this morning, the last 2 decades, marked by purposeful reforms, have empowered the kingdom to build a strong macroeconomic foundation, reinforce its democratic institutions, and establish the framework for a welfare state. During this transformation, Morocco has evolved into a regional economic powerhouse boasting a modern, highly diversified, and open economy. With over 50 free trade agreements in place, Morocco provides access to a consumer market of 2.5 billion individuals. The achievement of this economic openness is sustained by a network of world-class infrastructures connecting cutting-edge Moroccan industrial ecosystem to global value chains. We have also enhanced our traditional industries, including agro-industry, textile, and tourism, making them increasingly competitive. Furthermore, in our automotive and aerospace ecosystems, we have swiftly established high-performing industries that are now recognized as global benchmarks. And at the core of these achievements, our young and exceptionally talented Moroccan men and women fully engaged in building Morocco's ambition. Ladies and gentlemen, Morocco's ambitions reach far beyond its borders. Led by the royal vision, we stand as the continental leader in cost-competitive renewable energy production, and we are determined to take a central role in the world energy transition. Our strategic positioning makes Morocco an ideal candidate for the development of EV supply chains and will significantly contribute to the growth of our green automotive industry, influencing the future of global mobility. Thanks to our unique blend of natural assets, abundant renewable energy resources, and vast available land, Morocco is committed to secure a prominent role in green hydrogen production and becoming the energy powerhouse of tomorrow. These perspectives present remarkable opportunities to financial institutions, and today we encourage all of them to fully embrace their crucial enabling role. Ladies and gentlemen, to sustain our ambition, the government implemented a new investment charter inspired by His Majesty's vision. This groundbreaking investment charter not only provides substantial support for investment projects, but also grants massive investment incentives tied to the achievement of objectives related to job creation, value addition, gender equality, sustainable development, and regional equity. In addition to the investment charter comes the implementation of the Mohammed VI Investment Fund, instrumental in driving private investment growth. By investing in Moroccan businesses, it serves as a catalyst, mobilizing both local and international capital to significantly increase private investment volumes within the kingdom. Investing in Morocco can also be done through the growing opportunities presented by the public-private partnerships, with a pipeline of more than 100 identified projects for a total of over $50 billion across all sectors. PPPs will be a crucial pillar for increasing and expanding private investment in our kingdom. In this regard, there are numerous investment opportunities awaiting private and institutional investors, such as the implementation of the Nigeria-Morocco-Europe gas pipeline, inspired by His Majesty the King, or the expansion project of the high-speed train line to Marrakech and Agadir. In addition to this, the high-voltage direct current lines to transmit green electricity from the southern regions of our country to the key consumption areas. Furthermore, the expansion of the Royal Air Maroc fleet by 2037. Moreover, numerous desalination plants on the horizon. In addition to these initiatives, we have a series of national ports and airports and other major infrastructures to be launched, especially since the announcement of Morocco's partnership in hosting the 2030 FIFA World Cup alongside Spain and Portugal. These investments, co-founded by both Moroccan and international players, will propel our kingdom to the new heights, reaffirming Morocco as a privileged land for investment. Ladies and gentlemen, investing in Morocco is a winning bet. Our track record in transforming the kingdom stands as a proof. When Morocco commits, Morocco delivers, and we are living a real momentum. Therefore, we urge international actors, financial organizations, and both local and international private players to seize the opportunities and join the movement. By investing in Morocco today, you are shaping the world of tomorrow. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Thank you very much. And frankly, I really appreciate this idea of bringing together financial institutions, private sector, local and international investors. And I've heard, as the attendees and the audience, something very interesting. I've heard, Mr. Minister, this very short sentence, but really appreciate it. When Morocco commits, Morocco delivers. And I love that. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have 2 short sessions with distinguished guests for you this afternoon. And believe me, the guests we have are amazing. We're going to learn a lot of things with them. I'm going to have a panel, but before the panel, I have a special guest. And please join me to welcome the President of the European Automobile Manufacturers Association and CEO of Renault Group, Mr. Luca Di Meo. Very happy to have you on the stage. Very happy to have you here, Mr. President. And as we always say in Morocco, marhaban wa alf marhaban. It means welcome and thousands of welcome, and very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
I just had a look on your bio, and the first thing I want to share with the audience is that you are, excuse me for the expression, a kind of automotive industry man or car man. You've spent decades in the car industry, and you know this industry very well. And now you are the head of a very important company, worldwide very important company for Morocco. And I hope Morocco is as important for your company as is it for us. My first question is about your industry, the automotive industry. Can you tell us what are briefly the main challenges you have worldwide? And how does your group, Renault Group, address those challenges?
I think that we live probably one of the, so first of all, good afternoon everybody. It's a big honor for me to be invited here. So I'm very happy to be here and as always, very happy to be in Morocco. I think we are living one of the period of most brutal transformation of our industry, which makes it very, very interesting. You have some movements geographically, namely, obviously, the entering of new players, especially from China, as a new competitor. This is one thing. And then I'm going to use an image because this transformation is so complex, but I want to use an image that everybody will understand. It is like we would have been playing soccer for 100 years, and then suddenly the market, the trends, the transformation of technology is forcing us to play Olympic Games. And you have more than one sport, so maybe you have 5, 6 different sports. And then the question for us is to decide whether you want to do pentathlon, so you basically use the same athlete to do different sports, or you try to specialize 5 athletes on different sports because they have a different training, different talent, they eat differently, their performance. Their performance is different diet, and their performance is measured, different. Sometimes it's chrono, the other one is distance, etc. So that's the transformation we are in. The Renault Group has clearly taken the second scenario. That means we're trying to conquer new value chains around the value chain that we know since 100 years and getting into things like EVs or software or circular economy or mobility services, etc. And we specialize team doing that. Just a short answer to a gigantic transformation that the industry is making right now. And as I said, it's a lot of fun because we have to unlearn, relearn things that we had learned for decades.
I love that, unlearn and relearn. And at the same time, drive your people into this new era.
Yes.
Your operations in Morocco are significant to Renault Group. Can you share with us this common history that you have with Morocco and maybe help us understand a little bit better your current activities here?
But look, I mean, again, it's a difficult exercise you're asking me because I have to concentrate 100 years of history of Renault in Morocco in a few minutes. But what can I say is that we feel at home in this country because we've been around for a century. And the very important thing, I guess, also for some of the observer experts, investors, is that we don't only feel at home, but we trust the whole system. Our people, the private sector, and the partners that we have here, and also the authorities. This is, you've seen that through the speech that the minister made, the ambition, the strategic clarity that the authorities have, and they have been consistent all throughout the time. So it's a place where, we've built trust, we trust, and I hope we are also trusted. And we have a very important presence in the country. We have 40% market share, but more importantly, almost 20% of the production of the group, of the whole Renault Group around the world, is made here in Morocco. Almost 20%.
Almost 20% of what group the Renault Group sells.
Yeah, exactly. So we have exactly. So this is the second production, let's say site nation in the Renault world. So it's already achieved like the podium in terms of importance. And as we were discussing with the minister before, it's not only a question of quantity, it's also a question of quality of the things, because Morocco positions itself in our world as one of the benchmarks when it comes to quality, to productivity, to efficiency, to sustainability. So we have in Tangier, we have the most sustainable plant in the whole Renault world.
The most sustainable plant all over the world?
In our world.
Yeah, I mean, in Renault Group.
20 kilograms of CO2 per car. This is really a benchmark level. So it shows that it's not only about numbers of cars, it's also the way the people are doing them, right? The productivity, the quality, the engagement of the people. So again, to the investors, I think we are the living proof that Morocco is a good place to be in industry. And I want to make it very, very clear. Now, of course, when you have trust, you are in a marriage, and then you want to develop the business into the future. We have an installed capacity of 350,000 cars. We have engaged for a 500,000 by 2025, so we are growing the capacity. We have also made, a few years ago, commitment through the authorities to increase the localization level of our parts from a level that was below 50%. We are now at 65%. The aim is 80%. Why I'm saying this? Because automotive industry is actually a big crossroad where you have a lot of people, suppliers, tier 1, tier 2, suppliers coming from every industry, and we are a very, very strong integrator, okay? So if we are able to get to that level of localization, it means that you have the forces in place to actually finally build a car. And this is about materials, chemistry, electronics, etc., etc. So if we are able to get to this level, it means that the system is prepared for big, complex industrial operation. And that's what we're doing. So far, we are ahead of the plan. Mr. Minister, that of course is always pushing me to do more, but we are ahead of our commitment. It means that the thing works and the plan works.
I love the word marriage because it's kind of partnership. When you say marriage, I can understand it's strong partnership. According to you, what are the key levers for this strong partnership, and what makes it lasting relationship? Because this last 15 years were intense for both partners, and even if you are here since 1 century.
I think that, as I said before, trust is the base for any good marriage. And then you have to reinvent the marriage every day, in a way. So otherwise the relation becomes tired. It is clear that we have seen in front of us people that have been very consistent, that have a very clear vision of the world, and that are very business-oriented, which is actually not so common, I have to say, having to operate in many, many countries. But here you have, government authorities that are very business-minded. You have seen that from the presentation of the minister with the clear ambition. So this is and I think that they are also putting the accent on the important things. Morocco is, for example, a place where topics like transition to EVs, to sustainable energy, etc., are not just like a part of the story, they are at the core of the story. Because Morocco positions itself as potentially a supplier to sophisticated market, whether it's versus US or for Europe. They're not trying to do to close their thing within. They see them projected outside. We export 86% of the Renault production in Europe. This is an export platform, and to do this you have to comply with all the criteria, the regulations that are in the other market, and then we've seen that the system is prepared for that. Now we are obviously looking at how to also here manage the transition to EV. It's a big work that starts from the availability of material to the refining to building the capacity with gigafactories. And we think that Morocco will be one of the places where Renault will be building circular economy important project. Why? Because all the bricks or the Lego pieces are there, and we have to combine them with the support of the authorities and the private sector's partners.
We understand the strengths of this partnership. What can you tell us about the talents? What can you tell us about the guys that are working in your plants, from the line, industrial line, to the intelligent part of it, and what role do they play to feed this partnership and make it lasting?
Look, I think that I have to give you a few information. We have something like 10,000, right now, 10,600 employees, okay? Normally there is a ratio 1 to 6, 1 to 8 between a job that you create in the automotive industry and the jobs that you create outside of the automotive industry because of the nature of our business. That means there are probably 70, 80,000 people that directly or indirectly, we have an influence on, which is a pride for us, okay? The second information is we have more than 99% of the people with the responsibility of management in Renault Morocco that are local people. Okay, so the company Renault is a Moroccan company, and the company is run by local people, very, very talented, very, very talented. We have done a lot of work, and Mohammed, who is the head of Bashiri, who is here as the head of our operation, he has been many years ago, you know, in a way the activator of things. We put in 10 years 3 million euro of training, 3 million hours, sorry, of training in the training of the people. 3 million hours of training to prepare the people, and that's why they are so good. That's why they do quality, etc. Now, what is the next step and the opportunity? And I'm sure that the statement will be, let's say, interesting and good and welcomed by the minister who was sitting, the Minister of Superior Education, if I understand, that we actually want to go deeper into the value chain of talents and hire. And we have just established a digital hub here with 200 people, but I think there is a lot of potential to go up into the engineering parts, to develop engineering center, and not only to put, you know, bricks and mortars on manufacturing. You have, as you have seen, like 20,000 engineers that are coming out of the universities in Morocco. Is a huge number. They are very talented. They are very good. They are hungry. They want to work. Okay, and we need to, you know, to give them the opportunity to stay here instead of moving them to other places, you know, in Europe or in the US. They have to stay locally, and we need to provide them the opportunity. So one of the things we have in mind, thank you. One of the things that we have in mind is exactly to, you know, develop that kind of stream. Because the talent is there, the raw material is totally there, and we have to give them a chance.
Look, Ademir, we still have 2 minutes for this part of the session, and I would want to know, the automotive industry is changing, is moving very fast. You explained that in the beginning. Is Morocco going to be part of the future for Renault Group, and do you already have some ideas of what could be next steps, developments you can have together?
No, I think that so there is no doubt that Morocco will continue to play, you know, a very important role in our world. I think I already mentioned to you probably the whole ideas of you know, the switch to the EV is an important topic for the company in general, and for here, and also for the authorities. So there is space for collaboration. I would invite everybody and you know, that is involved in such kind of things to also support us in going and playing and using Morocco talent and resources to help us to move in the other value chains that are emerging in the automotive industry, software, services, financial service, mobility services, circular economy. I think that if we get Morocco behind, then we will make of Renault something different from just automotive OEM, but a tech company that you know, taps in different businesses, because we also need to, you know, to invent a new algorithm on how to make progress and to be profitable.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just want to ask you one last question. You know, in the new business now, we are always seeking the proof of concept. And my question is the following. If Morocco commits, does Morocco deliver?
So far, so good.
Thank you very much. Very happy to have this special guest. Thank you very much, Luca Ademir. Thank you very much. I love that. Yeah, it's the best when it's said by private sector and investors themselves, and I really appreciate that. This is a wonderful opportunity to have all these distinguished guests. And my panel is going to come in a couple of seconds with the other distinguished guests. Just some time to put the seats. So the Vice President, Middle East and North Africa World Bank, Mr. Farid Belhaj, very happy to have you here and thank you for joining us. Mr. Abdelhamid Addo, Chairman of the Board and CEO of Royal and Maroc Group. Please, sir, join me. You can come on the stage. Mr. Belhaj, you can come, please. And then, yes, please have a seat. Sandro Salzano, CEO of Salzano Group. Dr. Alexis Crow, Mrs. Crow, from PwC, who is the Global Geopolitical Investing Practice Lead at PwC, coming from New York to be part of our event. Olivier Perrin, Senior Partner in Energy Resources and Industrials at Monitor Deloitte, and Hamza Qabbaj, who is from Moroccan Private Sector, Senior Executive VP of SGTM. Thank you very much. I didn't check hands, but I'm going to do that at the end. Thank you for being here, all of you. Thank you very much. Mr. Belhaj, how are you?
Excellent.
How was your trip to join Marrakech?
Absolutely fantastic, as usual.
We are so happy to have you here, and you know that.
I'm home here.
You are home.
As you know.
I know that. I just want to, maybe because some of people didn't know that, you are the Vice President, Middle East, North Africa for the World Bank, with a long and outstanding career in this organization, but you have been for a while in position in Morocco. So my first question for you is, how do you see the evolution of Morocco and its economy from the moment you were here till now?
You know, when I started working on Morocco, that was in 1996, and then I was here as the manager for Morocco between 2002 and 2007. And that coincided with the government of a good friend and brother, Idriss Jatou.
Yes.
And that was a time, I believe, where there was a very clear choice made in Morocco to open the economy and to engage very affirmatively, on making sure that Morocco opens itself as well to its environment. And that has paid off. We see it today, 20 years later. We see a country that is, when we look at the whole Middle East and North Africa, this is the country that is doing the best in the whole region. Best in terms of capacity, best in terms of attraction of foreign investment, of course, as outside of some of the Gulf countries, of course, but also, frankly, the best in terms of prospects. So we see things are happening here. One last point I'd like to make. A few years ago, we went to the board of directors of the World Bank with the country partnership framework. That is kind of our plan for 5 years. And, it was a very good conversation, but at the time, at the end of that meeting, I said, look, you all are saying that Morocco is doing great, which is true. This being said, I sense today that the Morocco of 2019 at the time reminded me of my own country, Tunisia, in 2008, meaning things were going okay. The lights were kind of greener, yellowish, but that's fine. But there were some issues underlying that were not taken care of. And I remember immediately after that, we came to Morocco to present the country partnership framework. And immediately after that, we had a conversation with the government. And the government at the time took note, not necessarily of what I said, but clearly they were looking at what's happening around the country. And they went ahead and moved on the new development model that was led by my good friend Shakib Ben Moussa. He was here a few minutes ago. So I think that's important to see that this is a country that listens and acts, and it's acting in the right way.
One last question. What are the opportunities and challenges for economic integration and international trade available to Morocco on its international positioning?
Let me say two things there. Today, Morocco is growing at about 2.5%. It really depends on the year. The potential of growth for Morocco is about 7%, possibly even more. And Ricardo, I'm sure, will push on that. Now, the delta there, the difference is what? The difference is, that competition is not where it should be. We need to make sure and to open ways to new entrants into the economy in Morocco. We need to digitalize the economy even more. We need to bring women into the job market in a more affirmative way. It's a shame today to see that Morocco's female labor participation is going down. This is not the Morocco that we know. So competitiveness is important, digitalization is important, women engagement in the labor force is absolutely fundamental, but also opening up, as you mentioned, to the rest, to Europe and to Sub-Saharan Africa, to Latin America. And we see that there is there an effort that is really strong, done by the banking sector, done by OCP and others, done by Royal Air Maroc, actually going deeper into Sub-Saharan Africa. So all of these are really very good.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your point of view and analysis. I'd go to Alexis Crow, who knows also these issues about geopolitical analysis and try to complete our analysis of the region. What can you share with us about the region, and what can you say about Morocco's position in the region, Alexis?
Shukran, Professor Gorfi. Mesdames, Messieurs, salam alaikum. So I think firstly it's important to look at the external environment. We face a number of significant headwinds. We just heard from Professor Hausman about this positive correlation between export-led growth and sustainable growth. But we face very much a fragmented geopolitical landscape. We face a potential trade recession. How deep or shallow it will be, we will come to see. We face greater regionalization of trade. But on the other hand, we have stronger terms of trade in value terms just because of the elevated commodity price environment that we've faced since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And we have this extraordinary development of the energy transition and the green transition, which is a little bit potentially bucking the trend of this other shallow trade recession. And so here we have to look at where Morocco stands, and at the risk of sounding as a W.H. Auden poem, I would say north, south, east, and west. And here, of course, when we look north, we look to the extraordinary demand that Mr. De Meo was talking about with regard to the automobile market and the electrification of transport. Here it's very clear with European ban on the combustion engine, the role that Morocco can play. Very, very clear. And then we look, of course, to the south. And here I would say I was very struck during the spring meetings of the IMF by listening to ministers and others speak of Morocco's very privileged position with regard to sub-Saharan Africa. And here I would actually be looking to more services trade rather than just goods. I would be looking to the logistics side of things as well. Looking to the west, of course, you have this extraordinary development of America's version of industrial policy with the IRA, so-called. We will see how long this goes on. I'm not sure with the new Republican administration that this will be very durable, but elements of the policy will live on. And of course, we're seeing inbound U.S. investment into Morocco to be able to position the American energy transition going forward. Also, I would be remiss not to point out when I look west to Brazil. Now we have record trade volumes between Morocco and Brazil, I think, which are meaningful and significant. Looking east, of course, I would say that in this fragmented era, some of the GCC energy exporting countries are not necessarily within the remit of the American domain anymore. And I would say that the UAE, and looking at its inbound investment into Morocco, is in pole position. So on the longer term, if we're thinking about private investment and allocating long-term patient capital, I would say that Morocco is very well positioned.
Thank you very much, Alexis Crow. And I'd come back to you another time during our panel because Philippe Lhaj was mentioning the female in our country that are not participating enough, but I'm ashamed also about having only one woman among this panel. It's not good for all of us, so we have to do a lot for the future, I guess. I come back to you. I just go to your neighbor, Olivier Perrin. Merci d'être là. Olivier Perrin.
Thank you for being here.
And industrials at Monitor Deloitte. And you work on a report, an annual Monitor Energy Outlook. And can you tell us a little bit about that? I'm interested to know a little bit more about energy in the region, in Morocco particularly.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here with this very nice panel. So we started to look at the world after the COP21 in Paris and the Paris Agreement to look at, the evolution of what has been promised. I would say that up to the sanitary crisis with the COVID, nothing has moved a lot. Then the crisis came and we start to think, wow, things are not so easy. next big event was the war between Ukraine and Russia. And once, this time, the energy market was totally destabilized. So we look at that and we said, okay, at least at European level, we start to identify what could be a right way for decarbonization. So we published our first survey regarding hydrogen and where the hydrogen will come from. By doing that, it was very clear that Europe itself will not provide enough hydrogen to the European consumers. So we extended this year with a largest one, and it came very clearly that Africa will play a significant role in the global decarbonization of the world. There is no other option than to play with African countries. We deep dive a little bit and we analyze more about what could be the potential of some countries for hydrogen, which would be very useful for fertilizer, steel manufacturer, cement, all this big industry where it's hard to abate the emissions. And it comes at the end of this long study with economists, strategists, and so on, that Morocco has a unique role to play. As in our ranking, Morocco came into the top 3 for the cost of hydrogen. And it's very, very interesting because that's just the cost, the levelized cost of the hydrogen. But the more important is the potential for Morocco to export its hydrogen, to use internally for sure, to the benefit of the population, but also to export it. And I think we mentioned several times, at least this morning, that it's good to be an exporter. And in that case, Morocco will play a significant role with Europe, at least, to export its hydrogen. So for us, it's quite clear that Morocco is really the country to invest for hydrogen. But hydrogen will not come alone, so you need renewables to transform it to hydrogen. And hydrogen and derivatives, ammonia for sure. Why that? I think there is one thing that is obvious. The environment is good, and you have already started a proof of concept with OCP. So it will make the difference because everyone will look at the first mover, but everyone will look at the first successful mover. And I guess you have everything to be successful.
Thank you very much, Olivier. The fact that we are so close to Europe could be also this strategic position an advantage for the future in these green energies?
It's critical.
Yes, and also for the cost?
And for the cost, because your cost, so the cost for the levelized cost of hydrogen coming from Morocco will be at $1.1 per kilo. If I compare with Europe, it's 1.6.
Yes.
But if you add transport with other competitors, I would say that we're sure that Middle East countries will be very good too, but it's very far from Europe. Chile will be very good, but it's so far from Europe. Morocco will have to compete with the others in the south part of the Mediterranean Sea. But you have so many advantages.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and sharing your conclusions with us. We are going now to hear from the operators, people that are in the business and are making revenues, challenged by markets, and so on and so on. I want to start maybe with Mr. Adou, who is the CEO of Royal Air Maroc. Royal Maroc can play an important role geopolitically for Morocco, we all know that. But maybe just to start, may I ask you to remind us what is the DNA of your company? Because maybe we're not aware of that. A lot of companies disappeared these 20 years. Strong brands. But Royal Maroc is still here. What is strong in your DNA that allows now talk about the future for Royal Maroc?
Well, thank you, Tammy. Hello, everybody. For those who don't know us, we are the national carrier of Morocco. We are a 70 years old airline, one of the major airlines on the continent. We have been connecting actually the continent since day one. 1957 was the first flight to Dakar. And as our king once said about our country, Morocco has its roots in Africa and its branches in Europe. This is exactly the shape of our network. We are the biggest African connector between our continent, Africa, and Europe, and between Africa and the US and Canada. Member of One World Alliance with all the big players that you all know, Japan Airlines, British Airways, American Airlines, Qatar Airways. And thanks to these partnerships, it has helped us build more business, but also lift all our processes. Today, after COVID, we have started in 2020 a big transformation to build the new RAM 2.0 with a lot of digitalization. We are now back on track, efficient, more efficient than ever, profitable, and with the bright fundamentals to go beyond and to the next step.
20 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, 2003, Royal Maroc started to be clearly a hub for Africa and using Casablanca as major hub for a lot of countries. I think it's success because we all can notice that, but what can you tell us about the opportunities of the future and how can you be prepared to that?
Well, it always starts with a vision, and now under the leadership of His Majesty the King and the vision, we have a target to reach. We need to transform our airline from a local connector to a global connector, to multiply by 4 the size of our airline. We need to invest on, let's say, 4 pillars that are very important to us. First, human capital at a very strong and high pace. Infrastructure, and not only buying planes. We need to reach 200 planes in the next 10 years, but also airports, connecting airports to the cities. And this is a major step for us. We need to invest on digitalization and speed up much more all the processes that we're already doing, and make it greener. And one of the main pillars that we have is sustainable aviation fuel. This is today the only solution our industry has to lower down our carbon print. There's no other solution. There will be no other engines before 2035, so let's take on what exists. And we don't want to just be there and watch what's going on SAF. We want to be an active player, and we will be an active player. So those 4 pillars should transform our airline in the next 10 years to make it a global connector with a real efficient hub and very well developed. And these are the main pillars for the next 10 years.
What does it mean in terms of fleet, size, of investment?
Fleets move from 50 to 200 planes. We've already started since the signature with the government of a new contract, a new deal with the government. We've already bought 7 planes, but every year we need to get the delivery of 15 planes to reach 200 planes in the next 10 years. New terminal at Casablanca Airport, new infrastructure in terms of education. As I said, we used to train around 20 to 25 pilots per year. Since we've signed in September this year, so 3 weeks ago, we integrated 96 young students to the pilot academy here in Marrakech, actually. And the good news is that it's actually 96, exactly 96 students. 32 of them are women.
Oh, great.
And we at Royal Maroc are very happy with gender equality. The COMEX is 50% women, 50% men, directors. The only maybe area where there are less women than in other areas is the pilot area, which is, it's a complicated job. But we are happy, 32% of women today within the pilot population, upcoming pilot population. So we are very happy.
I'm very happy of what you shared with us. In your business in the coming years, are there any opportunities for financing or investing, for partners who are here, for partners worldwide?
Of course. We need financing to buy planes. We need financing to build plants on sustainable aviation fuel. We need financing for education. We invest on a school for technicians because everybody needs technicians. I mean, the Minister of Industry is here for the electrical industry. We need to be much more efficient on that and have enough, funds for that.
Thank you very much, Sandro Salzano. Thank you for joining us here in Marrakech for this event. Just to start, can you remind us or tell us what are your activities as a group?
Yes. Salam alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here. So as a Salzano Group, we do three main things. So we do venture capital. So we've been seeding a company from a very early stage and then towards IPOs out of California. We do real estate, mostly logistic, industrial. So we are very focused actually on the free trade zone model. We own a large free trade zone in Central America. We invested in several in different parts of the world. And then we do private equity. So we take minorities or majority stakes globally. We've always been biased towards emerging markets, I would say. And it goes from a consumer sector to agri-related sector to luxury to more industrial. So it's a very well-diversified conglomerate. And yes, we're very excited to be here. It's a great honor for us to be here.
Do you have any operations in this region, in Africa, or?
We are looking. I think that we are here on a learning journey. Obviously, we like Morocco because we see it as a gateway to Africa. In a way, it reminds me a bit of Panama or Dubai, where we have logistic operations. I went to visit Tangiers a few weeks ago, and I was really impressed by the infrastructure. I think you have, as my colleague mentioned, obviously human capital, which is very important for us. And when you're in logistics, you need speed, you need infrastructure, you need great people. And obviously, for us, it's interesting to have a local presence and combine it with our expertise. We've been working with many global players, many multinationals, and I think that we know what they're looking for. And I think Morocco has a very good momentum, and that's one of the reasons why we are here.
Do you need any advice from the guys who are around you here?
Absolutely, all the time.
Yes, because this is a matter of network, and
absolutely,
we heard the minister saying when Morocco commits, Morocco delivers, and the proof of concept. So that's why I'm asking. Thank you very much, and very happy to have you here and maybe connect with other investors. I go now to Hamza Kbaj, who is Executive Vice President of SGTM. For those who are not in Morocco, not from the country, in few words, very briefly, SGTM, what is it?
Thank you very much, Tammy. Good afternoon. So SGTM is the leading construction company in Morocco and in West Africa, I would say. We operate in 7 countries. We are a multi-specialist, meaning that we are active in various types of infrastructure, going from dams to airports to ports, bridges, multi-industrial complexes, commercial buildings, so fully integrated construction company, regional.
So in this kind of business, you work also on essential projects in Morocco. How do you see the country's experience in your sector?
Well, I think everybody's familiar with the big successes, such as Tangemed or the high-speed train, where we're involved. But many of these projects have been done in the last 10 years, not as marketed as those last 2. For example, at the moment, we are building 2 very big ports, one called Nador West Med, another one called Dakhla Atlantic. They will be key drivers of new regions, attracting future investments, future platforms, future free zones, and hopefully will be as successful as Tangemed. We have been involved in education in an amazing program backed by the World Bank with the UM6P University, where we broke records, I believe world records in how fast we build universities. We built a complex of about 200,000 square meters in Rabat in 10 months during COVID. We've built an amazing complex in Bengrig, half an hour away from here, of multidisciplinary university, also in less than a year we did the extension. During COVID, with the support of the local banks, we've done a vaccine factory in a year, when earlier on in some of the discussions we said, well, we have to do things we've never done. And I think we've done that, and we've proved that Morocco can do it with its own ecosystem. And I think that's what we've been part of, being part of building this ecosystem of capable local capabilities that are now exported abroad. And that only happened with the trust of our government and our leaders.
I want to come back. I'll come back to you for one last question, but to Alexis Crow before concluding our panel. We're talking about financing and investment, and here our session is about Morocco as a privileged land for private investment, for investment anyway. Do you think that in your analysis we can also position Morocco as a land for long-term and sustainable investment?
No, it's an excellent question. Thank you. And I think one critical turn of phrase to look at is how do we move from green finance to investing in the energy transition? And when we think about some of the pools of capital that are required to meet some of the PPPs that are coming out, I think this is absolutely crucial. One, putting my sovereign investor hat on, it's clear that the major ratings agencies still do not rate Morocco as investment grade, which will prohibit some pools of capital, particularly when it comes to infrastructure investment. So when we work with such pools of capital, we say to them, okay, well, let's look at the macro situation. With all due respect, actually, we heard from the governor this morning, Morocco's put an impressive play in place prior to the COVID shocks of meaningfully reducing the fiscal deficit. I think it's very important when we think about the long-term consumer market as well. The other is that markets like stability, not necessarily democracy traditionally defined. And this is extremely important when we think about the durability and the strength of institutions that we see as well. Thirdly, as I mentioned, the transition more than the climate revolution. Another thing is I think it's absolutely critical is to think about the participation of multilateral development banks to be able to shoulder some of the financial risks, some of the technological risks. We saw that in the Ouarzazate, the solar farm in 2018. I would say also here it's critically important with regard to, yes, hydrogen has prospect, although I don't necessarily think that hydrogen has walked the walk yet, just in terms of costs. So we see where this goes. But another one is agvoltaics, and actually thinking about some of the meaningful marriage between solar, for example, and agricultural technology, how that can be lifted and leveraged from Morocco across the continent and across other countries, I think is going to be very, very important.
Thank you very much. Come back to you, Hamza Ghbej. You are a private group. You shared with us your activities, but you also went into new investment in cement industry. This is a huge investment usually. My question for you is, how did you finance that?
Okay, so we took the challenge to vertically integrate some of the needs we had. So we decided to invest in cement and cement production. Initially, maybe a bit naively, back in the days, I thought that we could easily do that through commercial banking. And a little roadshow and pitching that we're great and we're good builders and we use our cement so we need $300 million to do a cement plant. Very quickly got back on my feet and understood that I needed to go a bit further in structuring that project and able to be successful. One of the steps we took is invite an equity partner through a fund called Infrainvest, backed by DFIs, in order to show transparency in the whole process of how this project was thought of, built, and operated. That led us to quickly also think about, well, why not dream and go get a DFI to put some money into a private project. Sat down very quickly at the table with the AFDB, which financed for the first time a private project in Morocco with an envelope of $50 million. And that clearly opened the way for every commercial bank to be at ease in dealing with such a big project in a local market. And what I learned from that is that you have to also be bold into getting into some sort of big project backed by big institutions. But what I would say today, and I have the opportunity to be on this platform, is to invite also these institutions to monitor a better time to market for projects like that. Because the time frame to be able to do such investments are too long nowadays.
Yes.
And way too long to be in line with the industrial needs, with the needs of the country. So what took us 3 years, more or less, to structure should have taken less than a year.
Yes, 3 years for a bank like this is something normal, but for a group, private, who has to be agile, it's too long. This is what you say.
And especially for the dynamic of a country like Morocco. Morocco is moving fast. I think we've done part of our homework showing that we're able to deliver, as Minister said, able to be trusting each other's, private sector, public sector. And I think we need to get the same level of trust from international entities and modernize a bit the process of jumping on board of such big projects.
Thank you very much. Sandro Zalzano, you're going to have the last words of our panel. You heard a lot today about Morocco. You're exploring. What do you have in mind? Still interested?
Sure. No, we are. I think for us, obviously, probably it could make sense to adapt and try to replicate some of our success. We've been very blessed, especially in the logistic and the free trade zone, as I mentioned before, and the agri. I would say those are probably the areas where we will look at. And obviously, each market is different, so we always try to partner with very strong local groups, and in our private equity portfolio, we are also often a minority, so we don't have, I think, a big ego. We don't need to, be necessarily in control. The key is always the people. So for us, it's really to feel comfortable to work with like-minded investors. We tend to think long term. My wife's actually, I proposed to her in Marrakech, so it's very special for me. More than 10 years ago, she always says that I think like a 90-year-old guy. And no offense to if there is anybody who is 90 plus, but so really try to have a long-term view, and so really to be, as I say, long-term greedy, because obviously being a private company, in a way we can do that. Often some of the companies that we were shareholder went public, they think too short term. So I think we can, we are long-term investors, and we are here to learn, and we hope that we can execute in one or two projects we are currently looking at. So really bringing the expertise and combining with the local knowledge and support. And yes, I was with the Minister of Investments. He was very supportive. I was really impressed also by the local authorities. So it's been really a great trip, I would say.
Thank you very much. We still have a few seconds. Hamida, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just a quick quote. In another life, one of my former bosses told me in Arabic, it's the market who decides on everything. And today, about us, the market is there. We are the #1 touristic destination on the continent. 2030, the World Cup, this is a huge challenge, but amazing business opportunities. So risks are not really there. The market is there.
Yes, this is what Olivier Perrin was telling us. We have to be fast mover, we have to move fast in every area, and this is important. I would love to say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say, madam and gentlemen, thank you very much for your contribution to this panel. And we're going to let the floor for the closing remarks. Thank you again for your contributions. Thank you very much.
Hello. So now we are ready to close the event, and Mr. Ziad Azzour, Director of the Middle East and Central Asia Department, will give some concluding remarks.
Please. No, please. Please, we'll be here 10 minutes. No.
book will be available.
All right. So no concluding remarks. Thanks a lot, guys, for coming here. The book is available outside if you are interested. And thanks again for coming here. I'll see you next time that we publish a book on Morocco, which I don't know when it's going to be. Ciao.